In the previous video, we discussed the concept of Nash equilibrium. We said that in a Nash equilibrium, the rivals choose their best strategy, knowing very well that their rivals will also choose the best strategy that is available to them. We saw that the dominant strategy was also an example of Nash equilibrium, as we saw that when we wanted to arrive at a dominant strategy, we looked at both the players and we looked at a situation where both the players were looking at that payoff which was the best for them, and they adopted a strategy accordingly. So, uh, how about those situations where there is no dominant strategy? How does the concept of Nash equilibrium help under such situations? Let us have a look at that with an example. So we go back to our earlier example of two management schools having two separate strategies uh, existing in an oligopolistic kind of an environment, and they want to adopt certain strategy knowing very well that their rival is also going to adopt a particular strategy, and as a result there are certain payoffs. So we have the school of management, which has two strategies, whether to go for international certification or to ramp up research. And then there is another school, the management school, which has two strategies, domestic certifications or aggressive marketing. As I told you earlier, the parenthesis numbers, the number on the left denotes the payoff to School of Management, and the number to the right denotes the payoff to the management school. So now let us look at these payoffs and try and understand. So for the time being, let us assume that the management school is going to adopt the strategy of domestic certifications. In that light now, let us look at School of Management. Now, let me remind you that the School of Management is not aware as to what strategy the management school is going to adopt. We are doing, we are assuming domestic certifications for our explanation purposes. So under that situation, if the School of Management adopts the strategy of international certification, the payoff to School of Management is 10. And if it adopts ramping up research, the payoff is 20. So under this situation, the School of Management is likely to pick up a strategy of ramping up research because clearly the payoff is higher in this strategy. Now let us look at it in terms of the other strategy which could be adopted by the management school. Let's say the management school decides to adopt aggressive marketing as a strategy. Now let us look at School of Management. If the School of Management under this situation adopts international certification as a strategy, then its payoff is 6. Whereas if it decides to take up ramping up research, then its payoff is 40. Now, in this case, as we can see, the School of Management has a very, very clear strategy of ramping up research. Let us look at it from the point of view of the management school. If the management school, for the timing, let us assume the School of Management decides to adopt international certification as a strategy. So, if the management school adopts domestic certifications, it has a payoff of 4, but if it adopts aggressive marketing, it has a payoff of 8. So, in this case, it is clear that the management school would be better off adopting aggressive marketing as a strategy. In case if the School of Management adopts ramping up research as a strategy, then the management school, if it adopts domestic certifications, it has a payoff of 18, but if it adopts aggressive marketing, it has a payoff of 40. So in this case, the management school has no dominant strategy. In one case, it has a strategy of aggressive marketing. In the other case, it has a strategy of domestic certifications. So therefore, this is an example of no dominant strategy game. We can clearly see that there is no dominant strategy in this game. Nash equilibrium comes in to help. Now, how do we decide which one is the Nash equilibrium? Remember, the Nash equilibrium says that each rival is maximizing or is looking at its best gains, okay, irrespective of what the other rival is choosing. So let us go over it once more and we are going to understand this. So therefore, Nash equilibrium will be a payoff which is favored by both. So if I go over this again, let us assume again that management school chooses domestic certifications. Now, under such situation, if the School of Management chooses international certification, then it has a payoff of 10. And if it chooses ramping up research, then it has a payoff of 20. So, under the assumption that management school is choosing domestic certification, ramping up research or this payoff of 20, let us sort of circle it, an invisible circle here. So this is what School of Management is choosing. If the management school chooses aggressive marketing, if the School of Management chooses international certification, then the payoff is 6. And if it chooses ramping up research, then the payoff is 14. So clearly, School of Management dominant strategy is 14. So let us circle this. Now let us look at it from the management school point of view. So if School of Management has chosen international certification, and if management school chooses domestic certifications, then the payoff is 4. But if it chooses aggressive marketing, then the payoff is 8. So this is the choice for management school. If School of Management chooses ramping up research, and if management school chooses domestic certifications, then its payoff is 18. And if it chooses aggressive marketing, then its payoff is 14. So in this, it is clear that the management school is going to choose 18. Now, if you remember our discussion of School of Management, we had circled this 20 and now we are circling this 18. So both the payoffs are being circled, are being chosen by both the partners. So this 2018 is the Nash's equilibrium. It is here that the management school will choose domestic certifications and the School of Management will choose ramping up research because both of them are looking at the maximum payout possible, the maximum payoff possible, irrespective of what the other rival is choosing. So Nash equilibrium therefore helps us in situations where there is no dominant strategy. Is more than one Nash equilibrium possible? It seems so. If we look at this game, let's say there is a couple, husband and wife, and both of them are applying for a job of professor at these business schools. Now, if you carefully look at the payoffs, you will realize that if both of them get the same school, their payoffs is maximum. And if both of them get different schools, their payoff is 0. So clearly, no one strategy is dominant for either of the participants. And there are two Nash equilibrium appearing in this kind of a game. Now, any employer in terms of these business schools, if they understand this kind of strategy, they would be offering both husband and wife the job. Likewise, in business, there are more than one Nash equilibrium possible, and there also one needs to understand that one needs to accommodate even the rival. Finally, let us now talk about prisoner's dilemma. the much talked about conundrum whenever we mention game theory. Let us understand what this dilemma is all about. Let's say there are two professional criminals, and let us call them Bunty and Bubbly. Let's say both these criminals have done a crime and they are caught by the police and they are taken to separate cells, separate rooms, and they are being questioned. Now, the scenario before them is such that it presents itself in a matrix like this. So, if you can look at their choices, they have a choice individually because they don't know what the other person is going to do. They have a choice to either confess to the crime or not confess to the crime. So let's say, let's think of this scenario where Bubbly ends up confessing the crime. Okay, Bunty unaware of it. If he also confesses the crime, then both Bunty and Bubbly get 3 years prison term each. So for Bunty, his payoff is 3 years of jail. But if Bunty does not confess, and we are assuming that Bubbly has confessed, okay, which Bunty is not aware of, then the Bunty is going to get 5 years of jail. Look at the other scenario where Bubbly doesn't confess, and Bunty, who's unaware, okay, if Bunty confesses, then in that case he gets 0 years of prison, all right. But if he does not confess, he he's going to get 1 year of prison. So in this case, uh, for Bunty, the obvious choice where with higher payoff is 0 years, and therefore Bunty the best strategy for Bunty will be not to confess. So, as we have done in the past, in the first case, Bunty's choice is clear, this 3, and we encircle it. In the second case, Bunty's choice is again clear, this 0, and we encircle it. Now let us look at it from the point of Bubbly. So let's say Bunty has confessed. Well, if Bunty has confessed, then Bubbly is going to get 3 years. And if Bubbly does not confess, then she's going to get 5 years. So for Bubbly, the clear choice in this case is 3 years, and we encircle this. If Bunty does not confess, then Bubbly gets 0 years, and if Bubbly also does not confess, then she gets 1 year. So here the choice of Bubbly is is very clear. Hence, the dominant strategy for Bubbly is to confess, and the dominant strategy for Bunty also is to confess, and both of them end up with this kind of payoff. The question is, why in game theoretic language this is a dilemma? This is a dilemma because clearly there was a better optimal solution here, but the search for the best strategy has led them to a less than optimal situation. A similar dilemma can happen in business as well. Let's say the game is being played out between OPEC and US shale companies, and the strategies are whether to increase production or to decrease production. We can clearly see that the best payoff is here. But the same concepts which we applied in Prisoner's Dilemma will lead them to a payoff here because this becomes their most dominant strategy because the one player does not know what the other player is going to do. And in this case, they'll be at a very suboptimal position. They could have as well, both of them, been in this position. Had they colluded, they would have been here. That's why governments, they discourage collusion. So this is the kind of dilemma which is arising from the concept of prisoner's dilemma in game theory. Thank you.